Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the structural framing industry. Regardless of how you touch this industry, we're glad you're here. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, I'm Sean Shields, Director of Strategic Partnerships for SBCA, and I'll be your host for this episode of Component Connection. I'm joined by Cheryl Lewis, COO at FairBuild AI. In this episode, we're going to explore customer contracts, why they're important to pay attention to, and what some of the provisions are that can get a component manufacturer into some trouble. Cheryl, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sean. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, Cheryl, you are with FairBuild AI now, but you have a long background in contracts and the component manufacturing industry. Let's start by having you briefly share the journey you took to get to your current position at FairBuild AI and why you have developed such a passion for it.
Well, I absolutely have a passion for this. It's kind of a passion project for me. I started out many years ago, won't talk about my age, but it's been a long time. I was a CPA, and then I went to law school and I practiced law, the tax lawyer, business lawyer, and then I started a marketing and public relations firm. I know sounds very disjointed, but it all had a journey. I did that for about 20 years before moving to Reno, Nevada. And when I got to Reno, was doing some other work and ended up helping some people start a framing company and a truss manufacturing company where we did trusses and wall panels, and ended up taking the company over and ran it until we sold it about a year and a half ago. And then Kendall Hoy, who is a good friend and had also been a consultant for my company, asked me if I would help him review some contracts for some AI software he was creating along with Kent Pagel, a lawyer who represents the SBCA. And they had been working on it for about a year and a half. And what I did so I've been working for them about a year and a half. So it's been about 3 years that we've been in development, and I helped refine the contract provisions in our contract review software to specifically work on behalf of suppliers, so component manufacturers and others. And then we also created a subcontracting side of our platform to work with framers and electricians and roofers and everyone else who subcontracts on jobs.
So, one, you have a background in component manufacturing. You know this industry pretty well, having run a business in it. And you also have seen a lot of these contracts, both on the receiving end and now sort of reviewing them for component manufacturers. I'm interested, why do you think contracts are so important to a component manufacturer's business, given your perspective?
Well, I think the subcontractors and the suppliers have been so much the underdogs in construction. They're so important, but the GCs have always had a lot of power over them. We all are fighting for contracts, right? And so I think a lot of people got into the habit of just accepting whatever terms were in them. And so they got worse and worse. And we really are incredibly one-sided on behalf of the job contractors. And I saw it, I would get a contract that, I was really shocked. I've never seen anything like it. I never had seen anything that said in my life that I'm going to pay you if I get paid. Like, you're going to bring $1 million worth of trusses onto my multifamily project, and I'll pay you if I get paid. Otherwise, gosh, you're out of luck. I've never seen that before. And it made no sense to me. So I called around to others in the industry and said, hey, what is this? And they said, oh yeah, we just sign it. Not everybody, certainly not everybody, but a much bigger percentage than you would ever think, because they think they have to get the job. And what I was hoping, and I think we're doing this very much, and I think this is Kendall and Kent's intention as well, we want to show people that actually negotiating is expected in business, and it also shows that you're a sophisticated business. Who doesn't want to work with somebody who's going to be around for a while? And if you're always signing contracts that could leave you basically in ruins, and some of them would, honestly, they could leave you in ruins. And I can give you some examples. That no company really wants to work with that. I don't really know why general contractors do this. It makes no sense to me. I think we should all want to work with people who have equal power and existence, have the ability to exist. But unfortunately, that's just not the way these contracts were designed.
So you talk about the pressures that component manufacturers face to just sign these contracts. Why do you think most often component manufacturers either feel powerless in that particular scenario, or they just don't spend the time to read through the contract provisions and fully understand what they mean?
I think it's both. I think right now there's not as much work out there as there was, let's say, during COVID, right? During COVID, we had a lot of power, but that is not the case for today. And I think what happens is general contractors are very, they're trying to reduce risk. Truly, their job is risk management. That's about all it is when you think about it. And so the more they can push it down to others, the better. And then the owners are doing the same to them, right? But I think what happens is we're very busy and we have a lot to handle. When you're a component manufacturer, you're working through supply chain, and you're working through labor issues, and you're working through delivery issues, and manufacturing issues, and equipment breaking down, and all the things that happen in a component manufacturing plant, right? And so somebody sends you a 40-page contract with 100 pages of attachments with it, with all these designs and things, and you just want to get the job. It's a $3 million package, let's say, for the next 18 months, and that's the work. So you don't want to send it to your lawyer, who's going to then charge you $5,000 to review it and maybe take 2 weeks, and they want it back in 48 hours. These are all the things that add up. And then you don't have time for somebody who is already working 15-hour days to read that contract. And if they do, they have the experience and the knowledge to really understand what they're saying. The problem, I've been reviewing contracts most of my life, and I can miss things. And the reason? They're mind-numbing. They're mind-numbing. True. Right. And they're so entrenched in legalese. So to be able to use a product that helps you review those quickly would have been a dream for me. Something that would say, hey, this is a problem. Here's how you could address it. That would be very helpful in the negotiations. But if someone's already overwhelmed, are they really going to take that time to do it unless they have a tool that can help them get that done in a day rather than in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Right. Well, Cheryl, obviously this is an issue. So walk us through this. Give me a few examples of maybe common contract provisions that you see component manufacturers are getting these days that can potentially be very problematic for their operations.
I mentioned one, pay as paid. So it's a very simple concept. There's also, and pay as paid, by the way, is unenforceable in, I think, 14 states now. Oh. So it's becoming more and more of an issue. And it certainly should be something, from a lobbying standpoint, I'd put that at the top of the list of things that states should be, the component manufacturers and subcontractors should be looking to eliminate. It's bad. It's not right. And it can actually cause you to lose your lien rights in some states. You've actually waived them in some states, or at least it's arguable. And here's the thing. Even if it's not enforceable in your state, get it out of your contract. Why go to court over it? Because that's the thing. Just because it's unenforceable doesn't mean it's not going to take you to court. Yeah. So these are the kinds of things I love to point out to people. The other thing is they may say, well, we're going to do it as a paid when paid. So I'll pay you when I get paid. But let's say the GC isn't getting paid in a timely manner because they're in a conflict with the owner. Why would I be the one to have to suffer for that? And so I encourage people to try to get it to pay when paid, and then or get rid of it altogether, right? Pay me in 30 days. I like that much better. But if I can't get to that, make sure there's no continued performance provision. So this is the real tricky one. If there will be sometimes in there things that say you have to keep working on this project, even if you haven't been paid, because you have a pay when paid or a pay as paid clause in there. You may not put them all together, but you have to keep performing. And let's say you haven't been paid in 6 months, but you're paying your team, you're borrowing your supplies, you're doing all those things and you're not getting paid. And this truly happens. It happened to me. And in this case, it wasn't because of the pay if paid or pay when paid clause, but there was a continued performance clause. We worked it out, but it could have been devastating. And that's what we're trying to help people see is make sure at least you can stop performing without a breach of contract if you aren't getting paid in a timely fashion. And actually, there's, Kent and Kim Doe put together a negotiation guide, a free negotiation guide that anybody can get by going to our website. And I think that's the kind of thing that we want to do. We're there to empower people and give people tools. That's a tool that pretty easy to go in and say, that doesn't work for me. I'll go out of business.
Right.
So work line. Another one that's really important, especially after COVID, is a price escalation clause. They're often not in there, but you want to ask for it. Or a force majeure. Force majeure is a clause that's, it's very legal easy, but it is a very common clause that you're going to add into a contract to say, hey, if something like a pandemic or severe tariffs or something like that happens that outside of the control of either party, we're going to work together on it, and we're not going to hold each other responsible for things that could escalate out of our control. You want that to be a mutual force majeure. Oftentimes, it's a one-sided force majeure in a general contractor's contract. So you want to say, no, wait a minute, I'm happy to do that for you. Do it for me too. But then the price escalation clause is one that says, I'll keep my price steady for 90 days, let's say. But after 90 days, we're going to review it, and I'll show you why my costs have gone up, and we will negotiate a better price. You won't hold me in breach of contract if we can't come to an agreement. That's really important because these jobs get delayed, right? And if it's delayed for 60 days, and suddenly, you've got a 30-day window until your pricing is going to have to be adjusted. So those are the kind of things that I think people don't think about, but they're so critical.
Cheryl, that particular contract provision can become very important in the coming months. We're right now at a very soft point in the market, but we've all been through the cyclical process. At some point, conditions are going to be right, and everybody's going to want to turn the switch on at the same time because suddenly every project pencils. That's when we have material shortages, we have labor shortages, we have lots of delays in the system as everybody tries to figure out and adjust to a new, quote unquote, normal that is escalated beyond where we've been for a period of time. And having a provision that allows you to go back, because like, God forbid you sign a contract at a particular, let's say, lumber cost, and then the lumber market.
Sure.
Yeah. You want to have some ability to go back and renegotiate, right?
Yeah. Lumber and steel, right? Remember in COVID, it was both. And when you're getting hit like that, and there were people who were stuck. They were stuck with pricing that they could not live with. And people went bankrupt. They just did. And that's not good for anybody. If you can't renegotiate, we went from, $350,000 to close to 700. It was insanity. And steel went up too, so our truss plates were much higher. It is not a good place to be in. And so we definitely need that. And here's the thing. When that time comes, you have negotiating power because we know we're going to have a crisis with all the immigration issues and the lack of additional skilled labor. We're going to have a crisis. And we are going to be the most needed people in the world between, manufacturers and subcontractors. Are going to be powerful again. So let's get ready for that. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and start negotiating these, but be ready to negotiate even more. Not in a mean or vengeful way, but in a way that starts to level that playing field. And we've got to do it, or we're going to, think about it. Our labor costs are going up. There is no doubt in my mind. We're all going to see those labor costs go up across the board. And so let's start thinking about that and create an environment that's more powerful for us. Here's an example of something that people don't even think about. I bet you that everybody listening today has received a contract that says subcontract at the top for a supply agreement. Everybody. They take the general contractors will take the same contract that they give to their subcontractors and send it to a supplier and say, we use this for everything. Well, it's not the same. Subcontracts will have retainage. Why do you have retainage? They usually fold back about 10%. Try to get it to 5%, but 10 is probably more standard, right? They hold that back to ensure that you finish your job and that it's finished in a proper way. They want to inspect it. And suppliers should never allow retainage to be retained or to be held. Never. It's not appropriate. But it happens. And I had to fight it several times. I'm not a subcontractor. Here's another issue that could be in there. It can have something as obscure as builder's risk insurance, something no supplier will ever have to get. And you go, oh, that's not important. It's NA. Well, if you don't mark it NA and get it signed, let's say you guys get in a conflict later. They've got a breach of contract claim, even though it was inapplicable. That's the way the law works. It's still a breach. Said you'd have it, you didn't. These are the technicalities people talk about in the courtroom. And believe me, if I were on the side of the contractor and I was looking at that, I'd go, they breached their contract.
Yeah.
That's the lawyer side of things.
Yeah. So there's a lot here, and there are many more provisions that you are seeing that are problematic. But, for this episode, if you want the listeners, the component manufacturers hearing all of this and saying, oh, I've been there too, what advice do you give about what they should start doing differently today with regard to contracts? What's your recommendation?
Well, I think everyone needs to be reviewed. I don't care if it's a contract that you've seen 100 times from the same general contractor. People change things. And even if you just go in and do, if you've got a contract that your lawyer has looked at and you're happy with, just go ahead and run it through your Microsoft Word comparison and make sure there's nothing new in there. And that is a very simple task, but it could show you something that's been added. I'll give you an example. I had a customer come up to me, and actually it was at ECMC last year, and say, hey, there's a one-line provision in here from my home builder that says something, we've got something called most favored pricing out there. That's a very common thing and very stupid to allow to be in a contract, right? Because, say, hey, if you change your pricing and give better pricing to this guy, I want the same pricing. Well, every job is different. There's no such thing as, a standard word foot price, because I live in Reno. Reno has real high seismic issues. We have, second highest seismic in the country. We've got high wind. We've got snow load. It's going to be different than in Florida, right? Very different. Yeah. So you can't compare like that. So I can't give you most favored pricing. But they now had most favored delivery. So I would maybe have to change my schedule suddenly to get to the point that I could deliver to this customer above and beyond every other customer in my list. I'm never signing that, because then I could be in breach of contract on a different contract. Why would I sign it? But it was one line, one very small line that said that. So these are the things I want people to see. And that's why, you've got to look at it. I know it's too expensive to send to your lawyer every time, but there are going to be times you're going to need to send it to your lawyer. Even if you're using something, there are contract review softwares out there other than ours. And many people use Quad and KPT. I would tell them that it's not bad, it's just not good. Here's the reason. They don't have domain expertise. So by that, I mean, they are not trained to look at what a subcontractor or supplier needs. They're probably going to be much more leaning toward a general contractor because they're using it probably more. They're running their contracts through things like that. Here's the other thing. Those situations aren't closed environments. So your information could get out there into the real world. So you want to look at something that's closed environment, but use AI. AI is an incredible tool, but you've got to make sure it's trained for your needs.
Yeah. It's a really good point. I mean, you point out that the legalese is really hard to get through. So, You can either pay a professional lawyer a lot of money to do it. You can try to use an off-the-shelf piece of software, but it's got its limitations. There's lots of things that they have to balance in making that call as far as how they're going to review those contracts. But at the end of the day, your advice is review every contract, review every word, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's going to be ones that are so small and so immediate. So let's say you've got a $50,000 contract and you're delivering it in 2 weeks. Price escalation is probably not an issue. Okay. That's not going to be a big problem. As long as you have something in there for delay damages. If they delay, if it's supposed to be 2 weeks and it takes 2 months, there could be differences. So you want a delay damage claim. Those are the kind of things that would warrant in a short contract than in a long contract. You want them in all of them, delay damages in all of them, but you may not need the price escalation along with it. So those are things that I think if you have something that's long-term, that's big, that's going to take up a lot of your capacity, you need to think about reviewing it much more carefully. And that's when you may need a lawyer in some places. I just believe that spending the time up front saves you a lot of time in the end. Your biggest risk, we like to say, your biggest job site risk is on paper.
Excellent. Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this important perspective.
It's been a true pleasure. Thank you so much, Sean. It's always great to see you.
And thank you to everyone else for listening to this episode of SBCA's podcast, Component Connection. If you've enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please like it and share it with others. Stay up to date and in the know by subscribing to Component Connection on whatever platform you use most.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com.